Thank you. Thanks so much. Good evening. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks so much for that warm welcome, and thank you to the John Adams Institute for arranging this event in such a spectacular venue. And thank you to all of you for coming out this evening. Let me begin by apologizing for the fact that I'm not going to be able to stay for the after-event book signing and conversation with all of you, which is typically my favorite part of these events, the ability to interact with people. The tyranny of a book tour yields to no person. And when you are on a book tour, every minute of your time is claimed by somebody else, and publishers are extremely efficient about using every last minute of your time and being very efficient at creating your schedule, except for the part where you're supposed to have some time to sleep. They get a little forgetful when it comes to that, but otherwise they're very regimented. And so unfortunately I need to run to the airport, but hopefully it'll be a great event and you'll enjoy it. This was actually a pretty difficult book to write, and the reason it was difficult was because it's been such a rich 11 months, or almost a full year now, of events that have given rise to all sorts of, I think, pretty profound implications. And so it was very challenging to think about how to structure the book, but also how to narrow down all the things I wanted to say into 270 pages. And it's even more difficult to think about what to say in 20 minutes that gives a meaningful glimpse into what I think is the core of the book. And I think the best way to do that is to talk about the reasons why I wrote the book, because the impetus for the book, the reason why someone sits down to do the very grueling task of writing a book, I think gives a fairly meaningful insight into what the heart and soul of the message is and of the points that are attempting to be conveyed. And the first reason that I wrote the book, and this might actually be the most significant, is that over the last 12 months, I have spent every single day working on story after story and document after document that reveal what the NSA and its surveillance partners around the world are doing to people's privacy, both on the internet and in telecommunication systems. And when you work on stories one after the next and are so focused on very complicated documents, you're really adept at communicating what each story reveals, but you can easily lose sight of the broader implications of what the debate has been about. And one of the things that was amazing to me is when I went to write the book, I went to look at all of the NSA stories that had been published around the world, the dozens and dozens and dozens of stories over the last year. And not only did I discover that there were some really significant stories reported on by other journalists that I actually was unaware of, but even more strange and even almost disturbing was that there were stories that I myself wrote from a few months earlier that I had completely forgotten about. There have just been such a huge volume of disclosures that I think it's impossible for anybody, even someone like me who has been in the middle of it and kept very close attention to it, to fully digest the meaning. And so being able to write a book lets you take a step or two back and think about things in a more deliberative way, and I think try to analyze what has happened and to appreciate the sort of deeper and more profound consequences of what these disclosures and the ensuing debate have meant for the world. And that's what I tried to do in the book, was to give the broader context to what all of these stories have meant, and to think about the reason why it has resonated around the world the way that it has. But a second reason for writing the book, and this might have been the one that triggered my greatest passion, is that so much has been said about this story, about the NSA, about Edward Snowden, about the work that we did, about the reporting, and a huge amount of what has been said publicly and in the media and by the US government and its allies is just completely untrue. And for those of you who like to bash journalism or bash the media, and I am definitely somebody who loves to do that. That's one of my favorite pastimes, is to criticize the media. I don't think you actually need to be reminded that it is very easy for media outlets around the world to disseminate all sorts of false messages and false claims. Anybody who sat through the debate in the run-up to the Iraq War knows the power of the political media to convince hundreds of millions of people of things that are absolutely false. So we all know that in the abstract. But when you're actually at the center of one of these stories that all sorts of things are being said about, your appreciation for the ability and willingness and even eagerness of large media organizations to churn out absolute propaganda, factually false statements, enhances greatly. I mean, it's almost as though their willingness to do that is unlimited, and you know that when you're at the middle of a story because you know the truth, because you've witnessed it firsthand and can compare what is being said to what you know to be true, and the disparity between those two things is actually quite stunning so many times. So I'll just give you a few examples of what I think have been the most amazing examples of just patently false claims being disseminated with great regularity, in fact, through to today.